The rumor at Northwood High wasn't just a ghost story, it was part of the architecture. Students whispered about the Hollow Girl, Emily Vance, who had walked into the detention hall 10 years ago and never walked out. The administration claimed she ran away, but the student body believed she was still in the walls, scratching at the pipes. Sarah, the new history teacher, didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in structural anomalies and human behavior. It was 4:15 p.m. The hallways smelled of industrial lemon cleaner and teenage sweat. Sarah stood near the entrance of the East Wing, a section of the school closed off for asbestos renovation that had stalled 5 years prior. She wasn't grading peepers, she was watching the dust. Specifically, a thin layer of drywall dust settled on the linoleum floor in front of the chained double doors. To the casual eye, the heavy chains and padlock looked undisturbed. To Sarah, whose previous life involved tracking high-value targets across Eastern Europe, the scene told a different story. The dust had been disrupted, not by a rat and not by a draft. There was a partial tread mark, distinct and recent, a sneaker, size 7, left heel heavier than the right. Someone had entered the sealed wing less than an hour ago. "You won't find her, Miss K." Sarah didn't flinch. She turned slowly to find Leo, a junior with messy hair and eyes that saw too much, leaning against a locker. He was the editor of the school paper, a kid who treated the school like a conspiracy board. "Find who, Leo?" asked Sarah, her voice calm, possessing that unnatural stillness that made students unconsciously straighten their posture. "The Hollow Girl. Seniors say she's angry this week. The lights in the gym have been flickering Morse code." He smirked, testing her. "Wiring is faulty, Leo. Ghosts don't wear Nikes," Sarah said, her eyes drifting back to the dust. "And they don't bypass excitement locks on industrial chains." Leo's smirk vanished. "The chains are locked." "The lock is a Master 175 series. It can be shimmed in 4 seconds, Sarah noted, her tone dropping into something colder, something not quite teacher-like. "Someone is going in and out of that wing, and whoever it is, they aren't maintenance." Suddenly, the PA system crackled to life, but it wasn't the principal. It was a high-pitched feedback loop followed by a sound that froze the blood in Sarah's veins. It wasn't a scream, it was a recorded loop of a girl weeping, underscored by a rhythmic, heavy thudding sound. Leo went pale. "That's the sound she made before she vanished." Sarah moved instantly. She didn't run, she advanced. She reached the chained doors, gripping the padlock. It was warm, someone had just touched it. The weeping over the PA system cut off abruptly, replaced with the mundane hum of the ventilation units. The hallway was silent, but the air felt charged, heavy with unspoken panic. Leo was staring at the speaker on the wall, his hands shaking slightly. Sarah, however, had already shifted gears. The teacher mask slipped, revealing the analyst beneath. "Go to the library, Leo," commanded Sarah. It wasn't a suggestion. "Stay in view of the cameras. Do not leave until the buses arrive." "But that sound." "Now." The word was sharp, a kinetic strike. Leo blinked, nodded, and hurried away. Sarah turned back to the East Wing doors. She couldn't breach them now. Too much exposure. She needed intel. She adjusted her cardigan, smoothing out the fabric to hide the tension in her frame, and walked briskly toward the administrative block. The school was a fortress of secrets disguised as an educational institution. If Emily Vance had vanished here, the paper trail didn't just disappear, it was buried. The main office was empty, the secretaries gone for the day. Only Principal Halloway's door was ajar, light spilling onto the carpet. Halloway was a man who smiled too much and sweated when he thought no one was looking. She knocked once on the doorframe, leaning against it with practiced casualness. "Miss Keene?" Halloway jumped, shuffling a stack of blue folders into his desk drawer. "You move quietly." "History teaches us to be observant," Sarah said, stepping into the room. Her eyes did a quick sweep. Shredded paper in the bin, a packed overnight bag in the corner, and a live feed of the security cameras on his monitor. One camera feed, camera 4, the east wing, was blacked out. I heard a disturbance on the PA. A prank? Holloway laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. Kids these days, hacking the system with their phones. We're handling it. You should head home, Sarah. The janitorial staff locks the perimeter gates at 5. I was just curious about the renovations, Sarah lied smoothly, stepping closer to his desk. She spotted a keychain hanging from his belt, an RFID fob that accessed the sublevels. I was just curious about the renovations, Sarah lied smoothly, stepping closer to his desk. She spotted a keychain hanging from his belt, an RFID fob that accessed the sublevels. The dust in the east wing is bad for the air quality. It's safe, it's sealed, Holloway said, standing up to block her view of the monitor. Please, leave the maintenance to the professionals. Sarah smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. Of course. Good night, Principal. As she turned to leave, she deliberately knocked a heavy glass paperweight off the corner of his desk. It shattered. Holloway cursed and ducked down to pick up the shards. In that 2-second window, Sarah's hand moved with blurring speed. She didn't take his keys, that would be noticed. Instead, she slapped a wafer-thin NFC cloner against the RFID fob on his hip. Her watch vibrated once. Data captured. Clumsy of me, Sarah said, as she watched him struggle with the glass. I let myself out. Nightfall turned Northwood High into a brutalist skeleton of concrete and shadow. The parking lot was empty, save for Sarah's sedan parked inconspicuously near the football field. She wasn't in the car. She was sitting in the darkened server room in the basement, the blue light of a terminal illuminating her focused face. Using the cloned RFID signature, she had bypassed the perimeter alarm and slipped into the nerve center of the school. She wasn't just a history teacher. 10 years ago, she had been an extraction specialist for a generic-sounding agency that handled domestic threats the FBI couldn't touch. Old habits didn't die, they just went into standby mode. She typed rapidly, bypassing the school's pitiful firewall. She wasn't looking for grades. She was looking for the facility schematics and the deleted footage from the day Emily Vance disappeared. "Come on," she whispered, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. She found the blueprint file. It had been modified 3 times in the last decade. The original architect's plans showed a storm shelter beneath the east wing, accessible via a freight elevator in the cafeteria loading dock. The current plans showed that area as filled with concrete, but the power grid analysis told a different story. The filled area was drawing 200 kilowatts of power daily. Someone was running a household down there. Sarah pulled up the student records. Emily Vance. Status: missing, presumed runaway. She cross-referenced Emily's file with the faculty list from 10 years ago. Holloway wasn't principal then, he was the guidance counselor. The principal back then had died of a heart attack 2 weeks after Emily vanished. Convenient, Sarah muttered. She accessed the security logs for the current week. The East Wing camera, camera 4, hadn't malfunctioned. It had been manually disabled every night at 2 a.m. and reactivated at 5 a.m. Whoever was hiding in the school was nocturnal. A noise in the hallway froze her. Heavy boots on the tile, the jingle of a large keyring. It was Bronson, the head of security. A former cop kicked off the force for excessive force. He wasn't doing rounds, he was hunting. Sarah watched the door's shadow. She had nowhere to hide in the small server room. If he opened the door, she'd have to incapacitate him, blowing her cover completely. She scanned the room. The ceiling tiles. Sarah climbed the server rack, pushing up the acoustic tile and hauling herself into the dusty plenum space just as the door handle turned. She lay flat on the metal beams, controlling her breathing, slowing her heart rate. Bronson stepped in. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness. He swept the room, pausing at the terminal Sarah had just used. The screensaver had kicked in, but the chair was still warm. "I know you're in here," Bronson growled, his hand resting on the taser at his hip. "Come out and I won't break your arm." Dust motes danced in the flashlight beam below, but Sarah remained motionless in the ceiling void. She was a shadow among shadows, her breathing shallow and rhythmic. Below, Bronson kicked the trash can, the metal clamor echoing violently in the small room. He wasn't just a security guard. His posture, the way he cleared the corners of the room, suggested tactical training, or at least a history of violence that went beyond breaking up cafeteria fights. "Rats," Bronson muttered, though he sounded unconvinced. He shone his light on the vent grate 10 feet away. Sarah was nowhere near it, but he knew he was calculating exit points. He tapped his radio. Perimeter clear, server room clear. Just a glitch. He exited, the heavy door clicking shut. Sarah waited a full 3 minutes, counting down the seconds in her head before she moved. She didn't drop back down. The server room was a dead end now. She had to move forward. She crawled through the plenum space, navigating the maze of HVAC ducts and electrical conduits. The schematic she had memorized was burned into her mind. She needed to reach the east wing, and the ceiling crawl space was the only unmonitored highway. The air up here was stale, smelling of old fiberglass and rot. As she shimmied over the cafeteria, she heard voices below. She paused, peering through a slat in a return vent. It was Holloway and Bronson. They were standing by the loading dock. Holloway, someone who had maintained his excellent ratings despite his lack of engagement with school activities for many years, continued to enjoy this coveted position. He wavered as he spoke, showing signs of internal turmoil. "She's asking about the dust, Bronson. The history teacher," he whispered, his pitch rising in panic. "She knows something." "She's a nobody, a state transfer," Bronson grunted, lighting a cigarette despite the school rules. "I checked her background. Clean. Boring." "Make sure," Holloway hissed. "The shipment goes out on Friday. We need the girl calm until then. If she acts up again like today with the PA system, I'll have to sedate her heavily, and the buyers don't like damaged goods." Sarah's eyes narrowed in the dark. Shipment? Buyers. This wasn't just a kidnapping, it was trafficking, and Emily, the ghost, was the merchandise. But why wait 10 years? The timeline didn't fit a standard abduction. Unless Emily wasn't the product, she was the manufacturing labor. Sarah continued her crawl, her muscles burning. She reached the firebreak wall separating the main building from the sealed east wing. There was a small maintenance hatch, bolted shut. She pulled a multi-tool from her belt, a slim titanium piece of kit she never taught without. She unscrewed the bolts with agonizing slowness, catching each one before it could clatter to the floor inside the wall. She pushed the hatch open and squeezed through. The air on the other side was different. It didn't smell like a school. It smelled like antiseptic and ozone. Sarah dropped down into the darkness of the east wing hallway. The floor was clean here, too clean. She crept toward the staircase that led to the filled basement. The door was steel, reinforced, with a biometric scanner. She couldn't hack this, but she didn't need to. The door was slightly ajar, propped open by a discarded textbook. The staircase descended into a darkness that felt pressurized. Sarah activated a small pen light, holding it away from her body, a tactical habit to draw fire away from the center mass. The steps were concrete, leading down to what should have been a storm shelter. Instead, it opened into a corridor that looked like a sterile hospital ward. Fluorescent lights hummed with a sickly yellow hue. There were doors on either side, heavy steel with viewing ports. This wasn't a dungeon, it was a facility. Sarah moved silently, her sneakers absorbing the impact. She passed a room filled with servers, the source of the power draw. At the end of the hall, a single door stood open. The sound of humming drifted out, a soft, melodic humming of a nursery rhyme, distorted and broken. Sarah approached the door, her body tight against the wall. She peered around the frame. The room was furnished like a teenager's bedroom from a decade ago. Britney Spears posters, a beanbag chair, a thick rug. but there were no windows, and the walls were padded. In the center of the room, sitting on the floor, surrounded by complex circuit boards and soldering irons, was a woman. She was pale to the point of translucency. Her hair was long, matted, and streaked with gray, though she couldn't have been more than 26. She wore oversized scrubs. This was Emily Vance, the ghost. She wasn't weeping. She was working. Her hands moved with frantic precision, soldering a chip onto a motherboard. "Emily?" whispered Sarah. The woman froze. She didn't scream. She slowly turned her head, her eyes wide and dilated. She looked at Sarah not with fear, but with confusion. "You're not the doctor," croaked Emily, her voice unused to speech. "You're not the guard." "I'm Sarah. I'm going to get you out of here." Sarah stepped into the room, scanning for cameras. There was one in the corner, but the red light was off. Emily had looped the feed. The ghost was a hacker. "Can't go," whispered Emily, returning to her soldering. "The algorithm isn't finished. If I don't finish, Holloway hurts Leo." Sarah froze. "Leo, the student? He brings me food. He brings me parts. He thinks I'm a ghost. I let him think it. It's safer. But Holloway knows Leo knows. He's leverage." Suddenly, the heavy steel door behind Sarah slammed shut, the electronic lock engaged with a deafening thud. Sarah spun around. Through the small reinforced window of the door, Holloway's face appeared, sweating and terrified. Beside him stood Bronson, holding a remote. "I told you she was trouble." Bronson's muffled voice came through the steel. "Vent the room. Use the gas." "No," argued Holloway. "The asset is too valuable." "She's compromised," Bronson snarled. A hiss of compressed air filled the room. White gas began to pour from the vents in the ceiling. Halophane. The gas hissed louder, a serpentine sound filling the sealed room. Emily didn't panic. She simply pulled her knees to her chest and rocked, murmuring code sequences. Sarah, however, went into overdrive. She had maybe 30 seconds before the anesthetic knocked them out, and 5 minutes before toxicity set in at these concentrations. "Emily, listen to me." Sarah grabbed the woman's shoulders, shaking her focused. "The ventilation. Where is the outflow?" Emily blinked, her eyes unfocused. "Input, output. The return vent is behind the poster." Sarah ripped the Britney Spears poster off the wall. Behind it lay a metal grate screwed into the concrete. Sarah kicked it once, twice, a powerful front kick that shattered the drywall anchors. The grate clattered inward. "Move!" Sarah shoved Emily toward the hole. It was tight, a rectangular squeeze intended for air, not people. "My work!" Emily reached for the circuit board. "Leave it," Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the fog of the gas. She shoved Emily into the duct and scrambled in after her, pulling the poster back up just as her vision began to swim. They crawled through the darkness, the metal pressing in on all sides. The air here was fresher, pulled from the outside. They were moving away from the gas. Sarah's tactical mind mapped the building. They were under the east wing. This duct likely fed into the main boiler room. "Why?" asked Sarah, her voice echoing in the tunnel. Emily crawled ahead, her movements scramble-like and feral. "I'm not just a student. I saw the numbers. The school, it washes money, cryptocurrency, millions. Holloway needed a coder. I was the best in the computer club. He made me disappear, said he'd kill my parents if I stopped coding." "And the ghost rumors?" "Me, escaping the room at night, stealing food, trying to signal for help. The PA system today, I hacked the bridge. I wanted someone to hear." They reached a junction. Light poured through a slat. They looked down into the boiler room. It was empty. Sarah kicked the grate out, and they dropped 10 feet onto a pile of canvas drop cloths. Sarah helped Emily up. The girl was weak, her muscles atrophied from years of confinement. "We need a phone," Sarah said. "We need the feds." "No," Emily gripped Sarah's arm, her nails digging in. "Bronson has a jammer. The whole school is a dead zone.
And the sheriff? He's Holloway's brother-in-law. You can't call local. Sarah cursed silently. Of course, small-town corruption. Then we fight, Sarah said, scanning the boiler room for weapons. She grabbed a heavy pipe wrench and a can of industrial solvent. The school dance is tonight. The gym is full of civilians, witnesses. They'll kill everyone to keep this quiet. Emily trembled. Not everyone, Sarah said, her expression hardening into stone. Just the ones who get in my way.
The gymnasium vibrated with the bass of modern pop music. Streamers hung from the rafters, and hundreds of teenagers jumped in rhythm, oblivious to the war unfolding beneath their feet. The contrast was jarring. Sarah led Emily through the back service corridors, moving toward the gym. The noise would be their cover, the crowd their shield. "Stay close," Sarah whispered. Emily looked terrified, the sensory overload of the music shaking her frame. They reached the double doors leading to the gym storage closet. Sarah cracked the door open. The gym was packed. Strobe lights cut through the dark. It was chaos, perfect for an extraction. "I see Leo," Emily whispered, pointing a trembling finger. Leo was near the DJ booth, looking nervous, scanning the crowd. He was looking for Sarah. "We need to get to him. He has car keys," Sarah said. Suddenly, the music cut out. The gym plunged into silence, then confusion. The house lights slammed on, blindingly bright. Principal Holloway stood on the stage, holding a microphone. He looked pale, sweating profusely. Behind him stood 3 men in tactical gear, not police, mercenaries, Bronson's contact. "Students," Holloway's voice wavered, "please remain calm. We have a security threat, a dangerous intruder. The school is on lockdown. No one leaves." The doors to the gym slammed shut simultaneously, locked by the central security system. A murmur of fear rippled through the student body. Sarah pulled Emily back into the shadows of the storage closet. "He's holding them hostage to flush us out." "He'll hurt them," Emily whimpered. "He's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes." She looked at the items in the storage closet: a ball cage, a tangled volleyball net, a high-pressure air pump, and a crate of road flares for emergency drills. "Emily," Sarah said, her voice steady, "can you hack the lighting rig from here? Use your phone or a terminal? If I can get to the network port in the DJ booth, I can overload the breakers, create a blackout." "Good." Sarah grabbed 2 road flares and the pipe wrench. "I'm going to cause a distraction. You get to Leo, get to the booth. When I signal, you kill the lights." "What are you going to do?" Emily asked, eyes wide. Sarah tied her hair back, her face devoid of fear. "I'm going to teach them a lesson." Sarah burst from the storage closet, not into the crowd, but up the maintenance ladder on the side wall, climbing toward the catwalks above the gym floor. The mercenaries on stage spotted the movement instantly. "There, top left," Bronson shouted, pointing. Sarah didn't hesitate. She lit the first road flare. The brilliant red magnesium light fizzed and sparked, blinding the men looking up at her. She threw it in a high arc. It didn't land on the men. It landed in the trash can near the fire alarm sensor. Smoke billowed instantly. The fire alarm shrieked, a deafening, ear-piercing wail that sent the students into a stampede. "Get her!" Bronson screamed, signaling his men to the catwalk ladder. Sarah ran along the narrow metal walkway. She wasn't running away, she was positioning. She reached the center of the gym, directly above the mercenaries. She dropped the volleyball net she had dragged up with her. It fell like a heavy spiderweb, tangling the 2 mercenaries at the bottom of the ladder. Below, in the chaos, a small figure in scrubs darted through the screaming crowd. Emily reached Leo. Leo, shocked but quick-witted, grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the DJ booth. On the catwalk, Bronson caught up. He didn't have a gun drawn, too many witnesses, but he held a telescoping baton. He swung it at Sarah's head. Sarah ducked, the metal baton clanging against the railing. She didn't fight like a teacher. She stepped inside her guard, driving her palm into her chin, snapping his head back. She followed with a knee to the gut.
Bronson wheezed, stumbling back. "You're done, Bronson," Sarah yelled over the alarm. "The police are coming. The fire department is coming." "I own the police," Bronson spat, lunging again. Sarah sidestepped, grabbing his wrist and using his own momentum to slam him into the railing. He went over, dangling by one hand 40 feet off the gym floor. She looked down at the DJ booth. Emily was plugging a cable into the soundboard. "Now, Emily!" Sarah screamed. The gym lights exploded. Not just off, they shattered. Sparks rained down like fireworks. The room plunged into absolute darkness, save for the red glow of the flare and the emergency exit signs.
In the darkness, the panic shifted. The students, guided by the emergency lights, surged toward the exits. The magnetic locks on the doors, designed to fail-safe in a power outage, a modification Emily had just executed, clicked open. The crowd poured out into the cool night air. Sarah left Bronson dangling, he wasn't going anywhere, and rappelled down the side of the bleachers. She found Leo and Emily huddled under the DJ table. "We need to move, Holloway," Sarah said. They exited through the backstage door, but they weren't alone. Principal Holloway was blocking the hallway, holding a snub-nose revolver. His hands were shaking so hard the gun rattled. "You ruined it," Holloway wept, looking at Emily. 10 years. We were so close to the payout." "It's over, David," Sarah said, stepping in front of the students. "The fire trucks are pulling up. I hear the sirens. You can't shoot us all." "I can't go to prison," Holloway sobbed. "The syndicate, they'll kill me slowly." "Put the gun down," Sarah ordered, her voice possessing the weight of command, "or I will break your wrist before you can pull that trigger." Holloway hesitated. He looked at Emily, the girl he had stolen a life from. "You're a ghost, Emily. You should have stayed dead." He raised the gun. Sarah didn't wait. She threw the pipe wrench she had tucked in her belt. It spun through the air and struck Holloway's hand with a sickening crunch. The gun skittered across the floor. Holloway screamed, clutching his shattered hand, dropping to his knees. Sarah kicked the gun away and pinned Holloway to the floor. "Leo, record this," Sarah snapped. Leo held up his phone, filming the weeping principal. "Confess," Sarah hissed in Holloway's ear. "Who were you laundering money for?" "Senator Vane. It was Senator Vane. The crypto farm. It was for his campaign. Please, don't let them take me." Sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights finally flashing through the windows. Real police, state troopers, likely called by the fire alarm. Sarah stood up, pulling Emily into a hug. The ghost was shaking, but she was alive. She was free. 3 days later. The scandal was national news, the school of secrets. Holloway was in custody, Bronson was in the ICU under guard. Senator Vane had resigned and was under federal indictment. Emily Vance was in a private hospital, reunited with her stunned, weeping parents. Sarah packed the last box in her classroom. Her cover was blown. She couldn't stay. She looked at the empty chalkboard. It had been a hell of a week. "Leaving?" Sarah turned. It was Leo. He stood in the doorway holding a copy of the school paper. The headline, "Teacher or Spy." "Time to move on, Leo," Sarah smiled sadly. "Too much excitement for a history teacher." "I looked you up," Leo said, stepping closer. "Sarah Keene, died in 2014, car accident in Berlin." Sarah paused. "The internet is full of misinformation, Leo." "Who are you really?" "Just someone who hates bullies." Sarah picked up her box. "Keep digging, Leo. You're a good reporter." She walked out to the parking lot. A black SUV was waiting, the engine idling. A man in a suit stood by the door, Agent Miller, her old handler. "Good work, Agent," Miller said as she approached. "The senator is singing. The network is compromised." "I was retired, Miller," Sarah said, tossing the box into the back. "You sent me here as a babysitter for a simple witness protection audit. You didn't tell me the school was a black site." "We suspected," Miller shrugged. "We needed a catalyst. You're a very effective catalyst." Sarah got into the car. "What about Emily? She's safe?"
Emily Vance is safe, Miller said, closing the door. He climbed into the driver's seat. But there's one thing you should know. The code she was writing, the crypto algorithm, what about it? It wasn't for money laundering, Miller said, pulling the car onto the highway. We had our tech boys look at it. It was a targeting program, autonomous drone navigation. Sarah froze. She was building a weapon. No, Miller said, looking at her in the rearview mirror. She wasn't building it for Holloway. She was building it for us. Emily Vance wasn't a victim, Sarah. She was a deep-cover asset placed by the CIA 10 years ago to infiltrate the senator's network. She didn't get caught. She went rogue to finish the job. Sarah stared out the window as the school disappeared in the distance. She wasn't the prisoner, Sarah whispered, realizing the truth. Miller smiled. Welcome back to the game, Sarah.